I have a long speech. I won't give it. Prepared it earlier, and I'll be very brief. But let me again thank the leadership of so many wonderful, particularly Chinese leaders who have suffered so much, starting even before Tiananmen Square, but certainly during and after. Wei Jingsheng, I met him in Beijing when he was let out in the early 1990s before being rearrested. And I'll never forget just being in awe of his bravery. He was given his very temporary freedom then to try to get Olympics 2000. He was such a high value political prisoner. And he was brave and very, very clear about the weakness of the West, including the United States, and made the point that when you coddle and kowtow, it only empowers and enables a dictatorship like Beijing and China to do its terrible misdeeds. We remember the Tiananmen Square dead, those women and men who lost their lives, but we also remember those who suffered in the Laogai and in prison camps throughout China as they were rounded up and mistreated, some of whom then made their way out and escaped in daring exoduses from China. It was mentioned earlier about how they continue to deny to this day what happened in Tiananmen Square. I remember when President Clinton, and I thought this was a very noble act on his part, invited Che Haitian, then the defense minister of China, who was the butcher of Beijing, to the White House, gave him a 19-gun salute. And while he was in Washington, Che Haitian said, "Nobody died at Tiananmen Square." I put together a hearing within 2 days, invited Che Haitian and anyone else from the embassy who would like to come, give an accounting for such a blatant lie about the deaths that they said didn't occur. Instead, he got a 19-gun salute and White House honors. I, to this day, shudder at that. I do believe that both parties have made huge mistakes in the United States and have thought that if we just trade more, somehow they would matriculate, they being the Communist Party, from a brutal entity to a somehow or benign entity. That has not happened. Xi Jinping, in my humble opinion, continues the horrific legacy of Tiananmen Square each and every day. Again, the martyrs of Tiananmen Square showed the way. Unfortunately, the Communist Party has chosen the polar opposite. Look what's happening to the Uyghurs, as was mentioned earlier. The Uyghur Human Rights Bill is on its way to the White House. It was enrolled yesterday in the Capitol, and I was there for that. The Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, another manifestation of brutality on the part of Xi Jinping. And we know that he and his ilk are orchestrating all of this dictator for life. And even COVID-19 is a further manifestation of the big lie repeated often enough. And in this case, they deceived first the WHO and Dr. Tedros, who runs it, into putting out false narratives about COVID-19. And then they continue to this day to deny any kind of disinformation campaign. And in my state, we've got over 11,000 dead. I've met with many of those who have lost loved ones. Our country, the United States, has lost many, and of course, worldwide, all because of this terrible virus of hate that was unleashed by the Communist Party when they had an opportunity at Tiananmen Square to embrace reforms and to start going down the road of reform. So I want to just thank all of you. We all know that religious freedom of every kind, Falun Gong, Christians, Tibetan Buddhists, Muslim Uyghurs, every faith is now under a siege, the likes of which we have not seen since Mao Zedong. And the whole process of synodization, of getting faith and religions to comport with Xi Jinping's nightmare, or find themselves tortured and horribly mistreated. Let me just say finally, if only our high-tech industries, even Cisco, we're at a Cisco website, a WebEx, I should say, meeting, using their technology. I had a hearing back in 2006. We had Google, Microsoft, Cisco, and Yahoo, and they were enabling the dictatorship as few can enable. I started off by talking about how IBM had enabled the Nazis. They helped to find where the Jewish people were, to track them down. And there was a book, actually, that I read before the hearing called IBM and the Holocaust. Fast forward to today, our high-tech companies have enabled this dictatorship to do horrific things to democracy activists, religious believers. And again, the legacy of Tiananmen Square, in my humble opinion, will be, we will honor those heroes someday, and you who are putting this together tonight and have been unbelievably heroic there and now, we will honor you for a new China that will emerge, that is democratic and respectful of fundamental, universally recognized human rights. So thank you for this remembrance. And that prayer earlier in this webinar that was offered, how beautiful that was. We need to pray for China. Pray for the people who are suffering, and even pray for the oppressors, that they will have a change of heart. Thank you so very much for allowing me to be on.